Let's create a new React application. This time the application name is Students App, and you'll see why. It's because we have a list of students, and we'll show the list of students, we'll do a lot of things. Here I have a blank React application created with Create React App. The application is running here, and we have this generated code. I deleted because we don't need it. And let's create some components. I have the components folder, and inside it let's create 3 components. I have the header, I have the student, and I have the students list. In the app component, this is our main component. I'll delete the logo from here. In the app component, I'm adding the header component and the students list component. I'm importing the components here, so I'm importing header from 1 second. Okay, so I'm importing header from components, header. So I imported header from the components folder, header, and here I'll have a header file. Here I have header.js, here I have student.js, and here I have students list.js. Okay, I also need to import the students list, so here I'm importing students list from components students list, and here I have students list. I'll create the header component. So in this file I have a constant with the name header. So here I have a arrow function. Here I'm exporting the header, so I have export default header. Inside it I add a div with a class name header, and let's add here students app title. In the app CSS, I'm deleting this CSS, and let's add CSS for our header. So here I have text align center. Let's align our text to the center. I have a font weight bold, a font size of 14 pixels, and a padding of 10 pixels. This is the CSS for our header. Yeah. Okay, let's test now. Element type is invalid, expecting a string. So in the app, we have an error here. The students list is empty, and yeah, now we can see here the text. Now let's create the students list, because because we added it here and we didn't create it. Let's create this component. So in the students list I have const students list, which is an arrow function. Here I export default students list. I have here the return for my component, and in the return I'll add a list of students. But first, here in this folder, let's create a file with the name students list data.js. And in this file, let's add a list of students. Students list data. We have an array with the name students list data, and inside it, let's add some objects. The first student has the ID 1. I have a first name. Let's add the name Martin, and the last name Randolph. Of course, I have Frontend. I have email Martin Randolph gmail.com. Let's copy this object. 1, 2, 3 times, and let's change just the name. Here I'll have ID2, and here I have the text. Let's put the name like this. Let's search for some random names. Random name generator. African, for example. No, here I don't have. Oh, here I have a list of names. Taylor, Carl, for example. Okay, and let's add another name, Cecilia Reese. And now we have an array with 3 objects. Oh, and here I have ID 3. Okay, I have 3 names. Now let's list all these 3 names here in this file. So in this file, let's import. So in our students list, let's import students list data from. So I'm importing this array. Okay, but first I need to export it. So here I'll export default students list data, and here I'm importing students list data from students list data.js. Okay, I imported students list data, and now let's iterate through our array. I'll do this using the map function. So I have students list data with the map function. Here I'll add an argument student for my arrow function. Okay, and let's add some more properties here. Let's add also the color property. So I'll add a color black for first person, color red for second person, and color green for the third. And let's add 2 more students here. 1, 2. For this I have ID 4. For this I have ID 5. And let's copy 2 new names. Erna Keller here. So last name Keller. Here I have this email. Okay, and let's copy another name here in our array. Okay, so here I have Jenny Hoffman. And let's change the colors. Here I have yellow, and here let's add purple. And let's create now the student component. For the student component, I create a new component with the name student. So I have const student. Here I'll have some props. And let's export this component. Here I have the return for my component. In the return I have a div with a class student. Okay, let's create a class with the name student here in the CSS file. And for the student, let's add a display of inline block, a margin of 10 pixels, a border of 1 pixel solid, and this color, a box shadow of 0 to pixels CCC, width of 400 pixel, padding of 20 pixels. And let's use now this class. Oh, already I added this class here. And now in the student component, I have h1 with style. And in the style I have color, and the color is taken from props. Here I have props color, and let's add the first name and last name. So I have props first name here and props last name here. Let's add also a h3 strong, and let's type here course, and the course is taken from props course. And let's add also the email in inside a paragraph. So I have also strong email here, and from props email, I'm taking the email. Now let's add this component in students list. So in my student list, let's add our student. So for each object from my array, I'll create a student component. So first I need to import the student component. So I have import student from student, and now let's use this component. So I have here student with the following properties. So we have a map, and if we have a map for each element, we need to add for each element from the map we need to add a key. So I'll add the student ID because the key needs to be unique. So I have student ID. For the first name, I'll add student first name. For the last name, I have student last name. For the course, I have student course. For the email, I have student email, and for the color, I have student color. So these are all the properties from each object. Yeah, I have first name, last name, course, email, color, and also we send all these properties in my component. So these properties will be added here. Okay. Now let's test. It's time to test. So as we can see here, we have the list with all students. So here I have the list with all the students from my array.